Oh. Damn it.
Not bad, right?
Miss Carroll, how do you feel? Does the smile say it all?
Carroll is a financial blow for Donald Trump, the former president's courtroom challenges by
Eugene. Miss Carroll.
Miss Carroll.
Miss Carroll.
Miss Carroll.
Yes.
Why not 100
Carroll, how do you
million?
feel?
Why don't 100 million?
How do you feel, Miss Carroll?
Why 200 million?
No. I'm glad you asked me that question. No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I am having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have. I have not spoken because I respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for months in this state, the state of New York. Attorney General Letitia James, and now this. Weeks. Why? Because President Trump is leading in the polls, and now we see what you get in New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump. But I am not proud to stand with what I saw in that courtroom. I'm not finished. Let me just finish and I'll take questions, please. Before I walked into court, that judge decided that every single defense President Trump had, we were not allowed to raise in front of the jury. It is in writing, and I encourage the journalists, the real journalists, to take the minute to look at his orders. There was no proof. And I couldn't prove that she didn't bring in the dress. There was no DNA. There was no expert. My experts were denied. Two of them were denied to come in. They didn't let me bring up that Reid Hoffman funded Miss Kaplan. And you know what we got in there? That my witness, who was her friend, who said that she is a drug addict and the drug addict is herself. That friend, I found out in there, was paid for by Miss Kaplan's firm, and that is disgusting. That is a violation of everything I stand for, and that is why I stand with Trump. And that is why so many Americans are so proud that he is running again and so excited to run to the ballot box. But don't get it twisted. We are seeing a violation of our justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not allowed to be stripped of every defense that you have. You are not allowed to be told that you can't bring it up. And imagine a point where a judge tells the lawyer, before your client, the former president of the United States, the leading candidate and obvious nominee for the Republican Party, before he takes the stand to defend himself, Ms. Haba, tell me the questions you're going to ask in open court and tell me exactly what he's going to respond. And then edited my questions, edited the response he was allowed to give. And guess what my client did? He took the stand. He abided by the rules of this corrupt system that I have seen. We will immediately appeal. We will set aside that ridiculous jury. And I just want to remind you all of one thing. I will continue with President Trump to fight for everybody's First Amendment right to speak. Everybody's a right to defend themselves when they are wrongfully accused and to be able to say, I didn't do it. And to double and triple and quadruple down and say, this is wrong. This is wrong. But we are in the state of New York. We are in a New York jury, and that is why we are seeing these witch hunts, these hoaxes, as he calls them. And this is another one of them. Be brought in New York, in states where they know they will get juries like this. It will not deter us. We will keep fighting. And I assure you, we didn't win today, but we will win, because the record that was made in there and the behavior I saw in there, some of which was reported widely today, gave us the most perfect record on appeal. And even if I needed it, which I don't, we were stripped of every defense, every single defense before we walked in there. And I am proud to stand with President Trump, because he showed up, he stood up, he took the stand, and he faced this judge. And you know what? I'll continue to do so with him. Yes. Of course I've spoken with the president.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former president scared now of the consequences of his actions?
The former president does not live his life in fear, as you've seen every single day. The former president and probably future president will continue to fight for Americans. Thank you very much, everybody.
To defend himself in the first trial?
Michael, would you like to comment?
I think this is really a victory for E. Jean Carroll and a victory in no small part for sexual assault survivors. Here's a woman that even though she was famous, I mean, the enormous power that Donald Trump has and his willingness to harness not only his social media and political power, but his money and connections, and really concentrate that against this plaintiff was pretty much unheard of. And I think there are so many women who did, in fact, and who would just say, okay, this is too much. I know what happened, but I'm not gonna go for this case because there's too much stacked against me, not only as a sexual assault victim, but one of this man. And she said, no, she said, I want my day in court. But in this case, he not only trashed the victim, but he trashed the victim through saying things that were demonstrably false and that a jury had rejected. So I think this is showing victims that they can have their day in court even against the strongest opponent. Now, it's not always going to turn out the best, but in this case, the jury looked at the facts and believed E. Jean Carroll, and they were not going to let Donald Trump get away with basically ignoring that verdict and continuing to inflict harm on her. What happens in this case is it's going to be appealed, and it's going to be appealed probably on the substantive finding that there was defamation and it was malicious, and it's also going to be appealed on the level of punitive damages. And whether he's going to win either of those issues, or there's going to be a revision to the punitive damages, which again are pretty high for defamation case, although, not as high as Alex Jones, that was $1 billion. But there might be a revision to it. That remains to be seen. But I think in the meantime, we're going to see a lot more of Trump, the defendant. He tried to make her feel like trash. And that is a common tactic, not just of abusers themselves, but of people who are invested in, maybe sexist systems that allow abuse to occur, is to shame people who have survived sexual assaults, to impugn their character. This is a time-worn tactic. And I think what's so important here is he tried really hard. He tried the hardest, and she didn't allow him to do that. And there are quite a few appeals in high punitive damages cases that do result in the damages being revised. So that could happen. But if the judgment stands, he's not going to be in, for example, Alex Jones's situation where he declared bankruptcy because $1 billion. And even then the bankruptcy court said, nope, you can't avoid the judgment. So it seems this is not going to bankrupt him if the judgment does go through and all the way through appeal. And at that point, he would have to pay up.